by the Rebel Band, featuring Roy Kick on saxophone. Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Black Stallion! Bring him on! Hey!
You ready to jump? You ready to jump? Welcome, welcome. It's 400 years now and over. All them superpower trying to conquer Africa. Yes, they went down there with all the lust and the greed. But okay, how they try, you know they can't succeed. Yes, they kill and they kill and keep killing. But the more Africans they kill, the more they see coming. And when they try and they can't make hands with Africans. They just pack up the bag and they go on to the land. Why? The more warriors they got down, it's the more warriors we come. The more Africans that they kill, it's the more they see come. Zulu, Ashanti, Watusi, Zulu, the more Africans that they got down. We get back Mozambique so easy. Zimbabwe and Angola are ready. And if it's one thing I saw now, whatever. Namibia and South Africa around the corner. Yes, there's one bomb they drop on Hiroshima. And they get the whole of Japan to surrender. And the 200 years red cloud on the reservation. But for 400 years, they still got a few Africans. Why? The more warriors they got job. If the more warriors we come, the more Africans that they kill, the more they see come. Ashanti, Watusi, Jojo, Zulu, the more Africans that they got job. Long ago, yes, they deal with Mopoyak and Sipingo. Yes, they keep killing leaders after leader. Look at how much they kill Africans won't surrender. And how come these people want to tell me Africans today have no unity? Yes, I know they may say I'm drunk, they may say I'm mad. But one day Africans will be living under one flag. Why? The more warriors they come down. It's the more warriors we come. The more Africans that they kill. It's the more they see. Ashanti, Watusi, Jojo, Zulu, Rakandela, the more Africans that they come down. Yes, them have the gun and them have the bomb. They're making all the nuclear weapons. And if there's one thing I know now I could bet, Africans never invent no bomb as yet. But then out of it all the bad. When they reach Africa, the weapon become a scrapyard. Like they won't believe the words of the old witch doctor. When you say that Africa shall never become why? The more warriors they got down, the more warriors wake up, the more Africans that they kill, the more Ashanti, Watusi. Bring it down, bring it down, bring it down. Jojo, Ashanti, Watusi. Jojo, Solo, Ashanti, Watusi. Solo, Solo, Jojo, Solo. The more African that they gon' talk.
The Black Stallion there. I I was in that audience long time ago, a long time ago in Washington D.C. Um, the Black Stallion appear in Washington D.C. More come. The Black Liberation Anthem from our Caribbean to the African world with love. More come, more come. A song of perseverance, a song of resilience, a song of survival. As it was, and it should always be. Good evening to you, wherever you are joining us from. We are ready to roll this evening. Our guest is GHK Lall. GHK Lall is going to be on, and we're going to be doing it this evening. Good afternoon to some of you. You're joining us from the parts of the world it's still afternoon. Welcome to Politics 101. For some of you, it's late in the night. If you're in Europe, good night to you. Welcome to all of you. Good evening to all of you. Those of you joining us from Linden, special good evening to you. I was speaking to some people in Linden today, and I know the cleanup is still going on after two disasters at your community. The disaster of the government taking its independence rally to your community, believing they chained an African from America and brought him here to dangle him before the world to say, here is an African endorsing our suppression of Africans in Guyana. But the brother play dead for see what funeral he would get. And he realized what funeral. And he said, hold up. These people you're suppressing, they're my family. They're my family. Old people say, pim pim, pim pim. Plan broke up. Why Jonathan Jackson coming here and meddling with the affair? Why you don't worry with what's going on in Chicago? You bring them. You bring them. Good evening, brothers and sisters. Kedaki Amsterdam is home and is in the struggle, continuing the struggle. Black Stallion. The more they kill is the more African we come. Good evening to you. We're talking this week about getting rid of the word Negro. Negro. Gotta go. You see, our history is much more complicated and complex. Not complicated, complex. And sometimes it takes time and it takes that moment. You all hear me talk about person, place, time. They arrest Gaddafi. They intend to throw him in jail. They attempt to lose him away, to teach the Negroes a problem, to teach them a lesson, to teach the Negroes a lesson. But as it is, as it was, that it always will be, there are unintended consequences. I was standing there in that police station when that person, Nigel Hughes, objected to the state referring to another person, Kedaki Amsterdam, as a Negro. It happened to be the time of our 58th independence anniversary. And another person, Jonathan Jackson, was in Guyana. C.L.R. James said, the fusion of time, place, and person, and the capacity of the society to absorb the energies of that moment. It was a moment. Poor Nandlal committed 2 crimes. The first crime he committed was that of unthoughtfulness. He's not a thinker. He's a bright boy. He went to school, he read law book, he passed the law exam. I'm sure he did well in class. I'm sure he get A's and B's and so on. And think he's a competent lawyer. I'm very sure of that. What I'm also sure of is that you can be bright, but you're not an intellectual. It means your capacity to think through complex things and to meet challenges. He's at sea, he's not an intellect. And so therefore, he committed the next sin. Well, why only now they're talking about Negro? It was in place for 180 years. Oh yes, Mr. Nanlal? That's how serious you think this issue is? You have reduced a people saying we do not want to be called by a derogatory name anymore. You reduce it. Why? Therefore, you are disrespectful, as the young people would say. Disrespectful. And as I always tell you all in my audience, when you see disrespect come from high places, it's not matter of fact. It's part of a cohesive value system that sees the world in a certain way. Poor Nandlal sees the world in which the concerns of Black people are not important. I can say that now. I've seen it so many times. Here are a people subjugated in slavery for 200 and odd years, another 150 years, and they're saying there's a relic of slavery that we want to get rid of, and you say, well, it's been there for 130. But you're telling them, so what you all want for that thing of slavery, it's been there for 240, 50 years. That man is so dumb and so disrespectful. And he is representative of a tendency in high places. Good evening. Welcome to Politics 101. Asking Titna laugh. Me laugh, asking Titna laugh. When I stood in that police station and Nigel Hughes, in his measured, intellectual way, said to the policeman, he's not a Negro, and he's not going to respond to being called a Negro. He's an African Guyanese. And I saw the confused look on the policemen and women, about 8, 9 of them. They were all Africans. And they looked confused. And my first response was, aha, David Hines. All those who are calling you racist because you have decided that in this phase of your activism, you are concentrating on Black people and trying to get them right and get things right. You are right. You're right to do it. In our haste to move from colonialism to one people, one nation, one destiny. And today, one Guyana. What we did was to silence certain things. What it means is that the ethnic groups brought into this one nation, one people, one destiny, their assets and their liabilities. And since African people suffered under that system of slavery, which our brothers and sisters, thank God, did not have to suffer under, they brought a lot more liabilities. And one of the liabilities they brought is how they're addressed, the name. As I explained last night, by the time we got to independence in 1966, Black people in Guyana stopped calling themselves Negro. I never heard the term Negro being used in my community, Buxton, and I born before independence. Professor Desprez said when he came here to do anthropologist, he came here to do research, he was shocked that Africans in Guyana were calling themselves Africans. They weren't using the term Negro and colored. So by 1961, Sidney King and H.S. Nicholson are forming the African Society for Racial Equality, not the Negro Society for Racial Equality. In 1964, they're forming what? The African Society for Cultural Relations with Independent Africa, not the Negro Society for Cultural Relations with Independent Africa. And the Fijian scholar who came to study at that time said, he pointed out, he said, wow, Askria got Africa 2 times. So Black people have long said we don't want to be called Negro anymore. We want to be called African or Black. But that got lost in our logical move to become a nation of all ethnicities under this umbrella of one nation. Thank God, our Indian brothers and sisters had removed the C word from official use. Our Amerindian brothers and sisters had removed the B word from official use. And white people had also removed the B word. It was never in official use, but it was in use. They had a B word too, Bakra. Bakra. White man, that used to call them Bakra. The present generation, many of you contacted me over the last couple of years. That time we never know white man had derogatory name. Yeah, they used to call them limey sometime. They come with a white mouth and so on. They call them limey. That was when the soldier they come in 1953. But before that, they were called Bakra. When we in the African community done call upon the ancestors and pour libation, the next thing we would do is that we would get rid of the spies. I would say, hey, Bakra watchman, come out here. You, Bakra watchman, come out here. Hey, Bakra watchman, come out here. You, Bakra watchman. So Bakra gone, so that if you were born after 1966, you don't know the word Bakra, except you come from Buxton or Itik or one of them place where we still used to rip them a little bit. But the African was still, Negro was still in use. I don't blame the politicians. I don't blame Burnham. I don't blame them. They were nation building. But in 2024 May, the spirit moved in Nigel Hughes. And so it's in the open. Instead of Nandela shot he blasted mouth. Carry not where you don't know. But he got a running mouth. If teacher George their life, he was a dabaya, you watch him. You running mouth, he mouth a running away bib. Nandela need but 10 bib. You all know what bib is? I used to put up on that little picture when I was the little, your little lele, you go up on the little cloud, they put a called bib. But a big man like that need bib because you run him out. Shut up. First of all, you're an Indian leader in a society that where racial contestation between your ethnic group and Africans is at a high point. Shut your mouth. Colin is saying Bakra was widely used in Barbados too at the time. Yes. Yes. Right. But no, Nandal got push him out because he think he own black people. And you know this business, black people not gonna vote for the PNC. What David Hines, who he speak, does he think he speak for black people? They want to tell black people who must speak for them. And so now Nandal wants to tell black people what name we must call ourselves. Good evening to all of you. I think you all are ready now. That is what is called the preamble. The preamble. And the amble now coming. Hey, last night we did an overview of Negro. And I got a lot of calls, a lot of messages from nice people, well-to-do people. The well-to-do people. A lot of them said it was a good program, and they thanked me for giving the history of the use of the word Negro and words that we use. But I want to say this before I bring in GHK Lall. Nandlal could do what he think he should do to us because we allow him to do it. You all black people, some of you licorice. Some of you licorice. And you know what the term mean, licorice? Are you licorice? They dangle a couple $1,000 before you all. Oh Lord, thanks for development. You can give a slave $1 million, he's still a slave. He's a slave with $1 million, but he's still a slave. And you all black people, some, not all, some of you all, allow you all to selves to be enslaved for a penny. Development. You see, that's why I'm not in the business of saying when they bring money and they give you take it and you know where you are going for. Do not take bribe money. If you're taking money, it must be money that is part of a policy of development for all Guyanese. Because people like Nandlal and them believe that they can, you see what I said, come and join the PPP. Left the PNC, left WPA, whoever, left them, come and join the PPP. And are you run? Some of you run and plan. Some of you run and gone. And they pick the 15-man power committee, and none of you not there inside it. None of you. None of you. Good evening and welcome to Politics 101. We are ready to roll. We are ready to roll. My brother, good evening.
Good evening and good night, everyone. That's a rousing introduction there. You're ready to roll. I can see that.
Ready to roll. Ready to roll.
Yes, sir.
GHK, you are a shrewd observer of everything Guyanese, everything as it relates to politics and governance. And what we have seen this past week is Kedaki Amsterdam being picked up under the Cybercrime Act, and all before the courts for a crime of saying to to a caller. I do not subscribe to violence. I do not promote violence. For that, he was charged. Um, put Kidaki Amsterdam's arrest and charge in context from your standpoint.
Good evening again, everyone, and good night wherever you are. Glad to be here with you. Sorry I can't do this more often, but I'm here. Kadaki, Amsterdam. It could have been you, David. It could have been me. A couple of weeks ago, I was in the situation where I'm on a program, and as a matter of fact, you had mentioned my name to the people when they came to you, and thank you for that. And there was this gentleman who was going off on a tirade against the honorable vice president and his people. And believe it or not, I am put in the position where I am sensing danger. I'm hearing footsteps. And I said to myself, I've got to intervene here, as unlikely a person and role as that is for me, and say, hey, we can't go there. We cannot go there. Because I'm asking myself if this chap is trying to suck me in, and you never know who turns up at the door and say, you were a part of this. So I look at Kadaki Amsterdam, and I heard that call, and I heard it and I reheard it, and I heard him clearly saying, I do not subscribe to that. Now, it took a while whilst that unfolded, but he could not have been clearer. His voice was not muffled, he did not whisper, and he was pretty straightforward. I do not subscribe to that. But like so many other Guyanese, it would be good to see the back of some of those people. And I endorse that. Let me come on this program and I say, because I've written this in different forms, and I say, given what has happened to Guyanese of all complexions, but particularly African Guyanese and Amerindian Guyanese and poor Indians to a lesser extent, the PPP government and its top people, it's time for them to go. It's time for them to have less power. Look at what's happening to Modi in India. After a while, people get tired of the suppression, the repression, the oppression. Your own people get tired of it. Forget about the people who are against you. And when your own people start expressing that doubt, that dissent about what you're doing, what may have enamored them in the beginning, it sends strong signals that what you are doing is wrong. It's not right. So when that gentleman called in, whoever he was and is, on Brother Amsterdam's show, he was expressing what for him is genuine resentment at his condition and that most likely of his people. I can understand it, but I don't agree, and let me be clear about this. I don't agree with how he represented himself on that program and for what rich brother Kadaki ended up in hot water and still is in that hot water because they are looking to nail him. Interestingly, and I'm going to divert for a moment here, if you will permit me.
Yeah, sure.
Negro. First there is the Negro. Then there is the problem Negro. And from Negro, if you'll excuse me again, folks listening, there is boy. And then there's the uppity Negro. And then there's the Negro who should not be heard. And then there's the C word for a man like me who should not be seen nor heard or be anywhere around. And where does it stop? Now that it has started, now that it's been allowed to get wings and gather its feet, where does it stop? Who are the people who are going to stand up against it and say, hey, you can't use that word today? We don't have to go into context and the history and the whatever it is. of Negro, but it's more than a derogatory word. It's a vile word that is intended to hurt, to put down, to insult, to put in your place. Get down and stay down. And it is strange. I haven't heard that word used in the longest time. And for it to surface in the circumstances of Kadaki Amsterdam, hauled in for what he was hauled in on, and it was not accidental. I do not think it was accidental. I don't think it was random at all. I think that was deliberate, and it was intended to teach him a lesson and to send a message to all of the people who look like him. Hey, we got you. We got you where we want you, and we got you under the boot. But little do they know, and I heard you call the name there, the Honorable Attorney General, a brother no less, and he really should know better than to keep quiet. He really ought to know that, listen, some things are not justified. Not everything can be rationalized. They may be rationalized, but people don't reason the same way that you do. People do not accept your reasoning. So when we start talking about Negro, we are going backwards, not by a step, but by a century. So we come back to cyber crimes. They hauled him in. Clearly, he said what he said after when the call ended. I think if there's one thing that I could recommend to my brother, given that he has a live radio program or things like tape delays, and I don't know how those things work. This is after the fact, of course. But I'd like to say that we cannot, David, we must be frank with ourselves. Given where the PPP is and all of the assets of the state that it has at its disposal, we cannot think for a moment that we can outmuscle. We got to outthink them.
Yeah.
We got to outmaneuver them. We've got to outskill them. So at the end of the day, we are not animals. We are people, whether we are black or we are Indian, whether we are African or we are or whatever else. We are thinking people, and we must show them that we have the capacity, the intellectual capacity to think through the issues and to outmaneuver them and outflank them and overcome them. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen in one program. It's not going to happen in a day. But we must outthink to outflank. And that's the idea here. So you've got to see them coming. They're looking, they are listening to this program right now to see, got you. We got you. We got you because, and then we're going to lock you down with the cyber crimes. I heard the Honorable Vice President, and I know some people may cringe. And I go back a couple of months ago, Brother David, when some people think I was too kind to my brother, Bharat Jagdeo. I think you remember that. I see you
Yes, I
smiling.
remember. I remember.
And believe me, remember what I said just now? You got to outthink them. Because when you go straight for the jugular at them, they see weapons in your hands that are not there. I got different kinds of weapons. I've been given different kinds of skills, and I'm going to use them. I'm going to use them to get to them. That is why they got to talk about me. That's why every day, and this program is not about me, this program is about Kadaki Amsterdam. That's why we must make them think and want to listen to us and read about us and then think some more. Because they want to know where we are coming from. We are frank, we are fearless, and we are not frightened. We will not back down. And here is the story. Truth is our weapon. People are hurting in this country. People are angry in this country. You can talk about one Guyana and we're going to throw some money to develop here and we are doing this for so many black faces and we've got these numbers on our side. But at the end of the day, the multitudes in this country of poor people, particularly black and Amerindian people with a smattering of Indian people, they are dragging by their behinds. And this should not be in this society given where it is today. given where this country is today, given where we have 1%, less than 1% of the population hugging the cream of the cream, the creme de la creme, and the rest forced to just wait with their hands outstretched. Those who have lost their dignity or because of circumstances have to have their hands outstretched. And I say, my hands may be outstretched, but guess what? It's one finger that's outstretched. And if you want two hands, you're going to get two fingers that are outstretched right up in your nose. That's my story. The Honorable Vice President, let's go back to him. He said the police were delinquent. You know what, Brother David, I'm going to surprise you in the audience here. I agree with him. The police are delinquent when it's people like me and people that are against the PPP, held as anti-PPP, anti-Jagdale, anti-this and that. The police are delinquent when reports are made, and I can attest to that, about cyber crimes committed against them. I know of a female journalist who had held to report an attack by a pro-PPP entity against her person. The police did not even want to take her report, and they ran her from one station to the other, from village to town, and whatever. She got that report, and you know what? Nothing comes out of that. In the instance of our brother Kadaki Amsterdam, the police is better than the FBI, Scotland Yard, and Interpol combined. I mean, look how quickly they act. And they can quote Cybercrimes Act, Section 18A, whatever, etc., etc. Come on, folks. The police is energetic when it wants to be, when it's got orders to be, and it is lackadaisical when it's other people, the rest of us. And the rest of us are people who look like you and speak like you, and people who speak like me, and just happen, in a few instances, to look like me.
GHK Lall here tonight. We're talking about the issues that have arisen over the past week. And of course, there is never a week without political drama in Guyana. It has to be because of the nature of those who are govern us, their worldview, the way they see governance. As I said last week, what would Mr. Vice President and Mr. President and Mr. Attorney General be telling their children or their nieces and nephews when they went home? I gave orders today to lock up Kedaki Amsterdam. Imagine when you go home, your children, your grandchildren, your nieces and nephews ask you, so daddy, uncle, what you did today? I gave orders to lock up Kedaki Amsterdam. That is the lot of those who are governing us. If they are interested, Gabriel, in moving our country forward, and we are forwarding criticisms, then let us debate, let us discuss what we are putting on the table. No, they feel that the way to deal with us is to throw us in jail. That is the definition of a dictatorship, and dictatorship has several faces. In South Africa and in Germany during the Nazi period, and the United States of America between the 1890s and the 1950s, it has an apartheid face. Some would argue, with lots of justification, that what is happening in the Middle East is apartheid. You know, 2 years ago, Mr. Nandilal would have us believe that when you say apartheid, all you mean is South Africa. And nothing can be more disgusting than that. Since apartheid doesn't have the name of a country written on it, apartheid is a system of governance that finds a home wherever it is invited. And in Guyana, apartheid is invited by the rulers of this country. You have been following, Gabriel, the visit of Congressman Jonathan Jackson. He was brought here by the government of Guyana. They took him to Linden at their independence rally misnamed national flag raising ceremony. They took him there and they tried to hide him away, cut out the world, as Martin Carter said in one of his poems, cut out the world, cut out the sun, darken the flower, stifle my breath, and hope that I die. But I laugh at them, says Martin Carter. Tigers don't think, nor toads, nor rooting swine, only man. Just listen and you will know. And he's writing in the 1950s, he said, in Malaysia, the hero is hunted and shot like a dog. In South Africa, they drink the blood of black women. Here in Guyana, they watch us and lick their tongues like beasts who crouch to prey upon some little child. But I warn them, like a tide from the heart of things, inexorably and inevitably a day will come. And they try to hide away Mr. Jackson. But some or the other, with the blindfold, their blindfold on, he was able to find his way to Mocha. And the rest is history. Gabriel, forgive my poetry. But I know you are a man of war. Sometimes they say you're a man of too many words. So you understand where I am coming from by invoking our national poet. With his blindfolds on, with the Negro blindfold on, he was able, as Martin Carter said, I come from the nigger yard of yesterday. I come from the nigger yard of yesterday, and to the world of tomorrow, I turn with my strength, not with the nigger yard of yesterday. I've left that behind that you say is 100 years old. And they try to blindfold that man. But like a tide from the heart of things, he found his way to Mocha. A miracle? You're a man of God.
Scales removed from his eyes.
Ah!
I know you're gonna like the one. Yes, yes. First of all, I must commend you. 60 years later, that you, the words just, the stanzas just flow. The stanzas just flow, man. They rest in your memory.
Yes. That was my job in the heyday of the struggle in the 1970s. You know, you had brilliant speakers like Walter Rodney and U.C. Kwayan and Rupert Rupnarine and Moses Bagwan and Dai and the others, and we had to pave the way for them to come out and speak. And so we had to learn poems of resistance from cover to cover. And you know, there's some things, once they take root in your inner self, they don't go away.
You know, I think it was, to use Martin Card, it was inevitable that Jonathan Jackson would end up in Mocha. Look at the man's roots. Look at the man's roots himself. Jesse Jackson. Martin Luther King is his godfather. And from Chicago. And there he was. Definitely, I think it just had to be. It just had to be. People are hearing the stirrings, and they're more than a whisper about apartheid conditions in Guyana. Oh, they don't want to hear that word at all.
Oh, no.
And I hear you talk about a system of governance. It is a system of governance, in my mind, fostered by a particular state of mind. A system of governance fostered and foisted upon a people by a state of mind. We, call it what you want, we up on top, we in charge, we the boss, we got the reins of power, etc. But there's Jonathan Luther Jackson, Chicago into Mocha. Look, the more you suppress, the more people express. History has taught us that. History has taught us that. If it's the Chinese, Red China, North Korea, Stalin's Russia. People are able to get the narratives of their anguish out. And there's always a Jonathan Jackson to listen, to hear, to be for their voices to fall, the echoes of their voices to fall on receptive soil, and for it to be taken elsewhere on the wind and to flourish. How is that for a little poetry there, buddy?
On the money, on the ball.
Yeah. All right. So you walk with your busloads of people and your big entourage, and you got these people who are hurting, and they come out and feel that they have an audience, despite the limited time they were given. They still want to tell their story, and there is Jackson listening. No, 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 no. You're going to give them a minute. You are not going to give them a minute. I am here to listen, and I am here for this purpose. They didn't bring you here for the purpose, right? They didn't carry to Linden for the purpose, but I come here for this purpose, this 1 hour, this 1 hour change. And he heard what has been shouted from the rooftops here, what has been tried to be suppressed. People have been dispossessed. People have been repressed. People are being oppressed. And one after the other, there were those who spoke from the heart. Not for the 1 minute that was initially supposed to be, but they spoke and they got their stories down. And let me say this to you. As you know, and I know that you are too, and lots of the people, most of the people here are believers. I mean, the great Negro spirituals, and we call them Negro spirituals at the time, now African spirituals, were you there? And all the others came out of slavery, came out of centuries of slavery, of unimaginable pain and hope. And so there's that chord in Jackson that has to identify with what he heard. That these people, these are not made up stories. These are real stories from real people with real anguish, and it has to be heard. And he made his way to the president, and as this is going to get to the bigger black caucus in the U.S. Congress, and I don't know what the people here are going to say. Well, they ain't got enough trouble over there and all them kind of thing. But we are the ones who run to America. So why are we selective now? Why are we so cherry picking? Jackson had to go there because I'll tell you, and you must have seen me write in that the arc of history, and I threw in there, I squeezed in, of justice. I think I've got this, I don't have this right. Help me out here. The arc of history is long, but it bends towards justice.
Justice, yes. Dr.
Yeah.
Martin Luther King, 1965.
Yeah, it bends towards justice.
Selma, Montgomery.
There, Montgomery, Mocha, Linden, there are people hurting in this country, and the more their stories are getting out. I know that the Americans are very unhappy with this government for a number of reasons, despite all that it is doing to Sweet Soap, Exxon, and that group, and the American business chamber, business people. But they are aware of so many glaring deficits in this country. The present ambassador is very, very quiet. The previous ambassador used to talk about inclusion and the wealth of Guyana being for all Guyanese and so on and so forth. That's on record. But when people are seeing that others are partaking and they are being squeezed out, they're being bulldozed out of their homes, and then they're being prevented from free expression. I think it was Franklin Roosevelt who talked about freedom of expression, freedom of religion, freedom from want, and freedom from fear. We've got the PPP, but you've got the three Fs. I think it's FFF, friends, family, and favorites. And then they squeeze out these freedoms. And so, but you can squeeze out freedoms, but you still have people at Mocha stepping up. That's why you had a Nat Turner. That's why you had an Akrabre. That's why you had a Coffee. One man, the Toussaint, Jean-Jacques, that you had one man rising up. We heard Black Stalin at the beginning, and he was lamenting about Africa and the lack of unity. And that's been a cry forever, that they divide and rule, they divide and use. And you talked about the couple dollars thrown the way at the beginning in your preamble. And we've got to come to our senses that people will give us $1 to keep us quiet, to pacify us. But we are not babies. We are not babies. The people in Mocha are not babies. Jonathan Jackson comes once in a lifetime, but there'll be others to follow because the story of Guyana cannot be suppressed. The story, and there are many Mochas, there's not just one. If it was a Mocha was one, it was an aberration. It was an isolation, an isolated kid. But you've got too many of these things happening. I saw the president go, or whatever you call it, national whatever, independence. And he walks with his honor guard. He walks with his honor guard. I mean, all in full dress attire. I'm surprised they weren't in battle gear, right? What message are you sending to a community that is hurting? What message are you sending to a people on that day of all days? You know, when I see a Jonathan Jackson, you steer him to Linden, you invite him here, and then you steer him to Linden. Then you try to prevent the people from talking to him in Mocha. There's a certain inevitability there that what came out had to come out. And more of that is going to come out. So I take hope. So when they lock up, they drag in and all over and lock up a Kadaki in the efforts to silence him and to throw the book at him and to make him go away. It gets out. It gets out. And the more they try and the more they come up with these schemes, the more they look weak, they look vulnerable, they make themselves look impotent. Because how many people you got like Kadaki? How many shows they have like this? How many people they have like me, speaking out and saying in our own way, in our own limited way, and then sometimes in our own bright and boisterous way? How many of us they have? And this causes this government so much consternation. It is incredible. Instead of listening to what people are saying to Jackson, we are saying on this program and saying, you know what? We don't agree with everything that you say, but let us work together for the uplift of this country. Instead of you trying to stamp out people, you are trying to shut them up and muzzle them and silence them. For what purpose? So that your atmospherics will prevail? Here, the arc of history is long, but it bends towards justice. What injustice cannot continue indefinitely. Injustice and wrongdoing, and there's a lot of wrongdoing here. Malfeasances in office, maladministration, malevolence in governance. It cannot go on in a time like this when we have the technology that we have. Technology should empower us. When the technology is being misused against us. And look, Jonathan Jackson came and he walks away. He walks away with a Bible of what Guyana is and what it should not be. And where, because of what it is, what it has, and what he heard, where it must go from there.
Where it must go from here. GHK Lall here tonight. We're talking about the arrest and charge of Kedaki Amsterdam and the visit to our Guyana of Jonathan Jackson, the son of Reverend Jesse Jackson. He's a congressman and he was invited here by the government of Guyana. But he found his way to Mocha. He found his way to Itpada G. He found his way to the opposition leader and his team. It found its way to parts of southern Georgetown, and so it must be. I was part of a delegation that met with Congressman Hakeem Jeffries last year, and I reminded Congressman Jeffries that the Black Caucus, the chart of the Black Caucus, says that they must witness not only for African Americans, but for Africans all over the world. And his eyes lit up and he said, the professor is right. There's a reason we were not called African American Caucus, that we were called Black Caucus. And indeed, those who are saying to Jesse Jackson's son that he must be concerned with the people of Chicago and not with what's happening to his brothers and sisters in Guyana. They know not of what they speak. Good evening to you all and welcome to Politics 101. Our guest tonight is GHK Lall. GHK, our government is taking side in a fight between Chevron and Hess. Regular or thing not regular?
Definitely thing no regular. I mean, we've got one albatross around our necks. Why are we going to get in the middle of a fight between elephants? Why do we look? Exxon is number one. Exxon is king here. But Chevron is no better. Chevron owes the people of Ecuador, I think it's about 14 years now. There's a court case where the people's lawyer ended up, I think, being disbarred. Ecuador is owed billions of dollars in an unpaid court award by Chevron. It's owed billions of dollars by Chevron. Many of them are Amazonian Indians. Look, harking back to my time in the United States, of which 20 was spent on Wall Street at a low level, middle level, and a high level, you got to see capitalism from the inside, how ruthless it is. And you don't want to be anywhere near to it. So investment banking, we deal with the Exxons and Chevrons of the world, and we tell them, we give them strategies and advice and clues on how to infiltrate and to commandeer local people for profit. And local people, we're talking about the people at the top. Why is my president, why is my government, our government, the government of Guyana, taking one side or the other here? That's a loser's game for us. For us. Because Chevron is as profit oriented at the cheapest cost and at all costs and by any means with our oil. It comes here, we're going to have two Exxons to deal with. We can barely deal with one. We can't deal with one. We're going to deal with two of them here. I mean, Chevron, I think, is number 2 right now.
Yeah.
And Michael Worth is just as voracious as Darren Woods. Michael Worth is the CEO of Chevron.
Chevron, yes.
Michael Worth, if he succeeds and he gets past the Federal Trade Commission, has $53 billion that he's going to pay, US dollars, $53 billion, for the Hess buyout. He's going to have to recoup that in quick time. And the quickest time he can do that is running amok here, where we have little in regulation, little in governance restraint, little in leadership acumen, What are we going to have? Two of them? It's like having America and the USSR here at the same time, the old USSR. It's like having America and Russia in full force here. America and China. I mean, not some supermarkets and restaurants, excuse me. We're talking about America and China here in full body armor, full corporate flow. We, I mean, we're not even ants in the grass. We shouldn't be taking any sides here. We should be looking to see how we could drive a wedge between them, quite frankly. We should be looking to see how we could capitalize on this. I am unhappy that my asset, my patrimony, could be passed from hand to hand. Could the 30% share of John Hess Corporation, the owner of the New York Jets, I don't know if they still do, they were when I was there, the new NFL team, could take his 30% of the Starbrook block and sell it to Chevron as part of his entire company's sale to Chevron. I mean, that 30% of the Starbrook block is ours. It's yours. It's the people in Mocha. It's the people in Paradise and the Monrepo and wherever. It's their thing. But here it is that our asset, our inheritance, is being sold without us having a say. And our president is saying, well, look, competition. What blasted competition is he talking about? What competitive forces are going to be introduced here that is going to pit Chevron against Exxon? When both of them come here and realize we got a paku and we must bossy back, huh?
And put salt.
And put salt.
And pepper too.
Right? What the hell? I mean, competitive forces? Do we know what we are talking about? Does President Dr. Muhammad Irfan Ali, whichever university, know what he's talking about when he's talking about competitive forces, genuine competitive forces, with those two oil behemoths present here simultaneously? What, they're going to be fighting one another when they could say, hey, it is to our advantage to put our heads together to make this thing work, because these people ain't got no eyes in front of them. Forget about the back of their eyes, or back of their head. They ain't got no eyes in front of their head. So therefore, we could do what we want here and report what we want and make money for our people. Make money hand over fist for our people. So instead of competitive forces, now you're talking about collusive forces, collusive pressures or influences. And we are nowhere in the picture.
We are nowhere in the picture.
Yes.
GHK Lall. GHK, we talked earlier about the PPP going to Linden, 87 bus loads, and they went, they partied, and they left. And the next few days, Linden was buried underwater. The government appoints the prime minister to go on the airwaves and to say the floods were caused by the neglect of leaders. Was that a smart thing to do by the government?
No, no, absolutely not. And the prime minister is no dummy. And the prime minister happens to be, the honorable prime minister happens to be African Guyanese. Look.
And from Linden. And from Linden.
I didn't know that. Thank
yes,
you.
He's a Linden man.
Which makes it even worse. That you are going to be, you're going to allow yourself to be used to go among your people into your roots and tell them that are you these responsible for your situation? What foolish? I mean, that's not foolishness. I mean, what an assault on the senses! What an insult to the intelligence of those people. A couple of days before, you come like some conquering army, and you walk with 87 bus loads of people. Multiplied by 10, I don't know how big those buses are. You could tell me. Multiplied by 20, You're talking a couple of thousand people there. I think fairly 1,500 to 2,000 at minimum. And so I can imagine the partying, not the partying, and the amount of detritus that was left there. And then the floods came, and the drains are clogged. And you tell reasonable people, not deep thinking people, reasonable people, common sense people, that this thing here is when what happened to some of the things that you weren't listening to the community whilst you were constructing roads and so on and so forth. The fact that you put a black man to tell black people that this black moment is responsible for your black people behavior, that is bad news. That rubs salt in the wounds. That is a dirty story. And Mark Phillips, Mr. Mark Anthony Phillips, and this is not Shakespeare, he should have known better than to go to his countrymen and come up with a lament.
Mark Phillips should know better. GHK, we are 58 years old. We got there in the 26th of May. Is independence and the independence dream, is it still on? Is it still relevant? What says you, um, Guyana at 58?
Guyana at 58 is not even eight in terms of real independence. I hate myself for saying that. I hate having to say that. Here we are, independent, but where is our liberty when we are enslaved by something called contract sanctity? We have an oil contract that they tell me the sanctity of that contract supersedes the sovereignty of my presidency, supersedes the sovereignty of my parliament, supersedes the hegemony, the supremacy of my civic institutions and public institutions. What are you talking about, Dr. Hines, in terms of independence when we have that reality to live with today? Where is the independence? We fought for that independence. Burnham and Jagan fought for it. Burnham took the lead in the latter years and fought for that independence, hard fought. And we have replaced the British with the Americans, or the Americans have replaced the British. And you and I are Americans on paper. So it's not come easy to say this. But the fact is we have new masters in this country, and that is by our own omissions, our own omission of spirit, our own omission of courage, our own omission of exercising the fullest liberty that genuine independence and national self-determination permit. Permit. Why aren't we exercising the freedom that comes with independence, the freedom of free men, of free thinkers, of free expressors of what the visions are for our nation, and it must not be what it is today. Yes, we have traveled 58 years, but have we traveled 58 steps?
GHK Lall. GHK, I was out at the court today waiting for Kadaki to be released, and there was some commotion across the street. And the journalists turned their attention and they ran over. I ran with them. And there I saw this, I don't know what they call them, forklift under the stall of some women selling beverages and so on at the corner there of Demico. And the men were ominous, ready to forklift the thing. And the women were, screaming and crying, and some of them were using choice words. And the men were saying, "We are here to do a job." But all the women were African women. All the men with the forklift were African men. And I got there. One or two of them recognized me, and they rushed to me, and they told me what the problem is. I went to the men who were forklifting, and I asked them, "Can you?" They're asking for time to move the thing, And they said, well, we working with instructions, boss. You got to talk to the city engineer. I asked if anybody had the city engineer's number. Somebody gave me the number. I called him. He graciously answered. I spoke with him. I told him this is not a pretty sight. Um, I identified myself. He said he knew who I was. And I said, I am pleading on behalf of these people to give them a few more hours to get their stuff out of the way. He told me that they had weeks and to get their stuff out of the way. They didn't get the stuff out of the way. I told him I understand that, but I can't, as a Guyanese, with a voice, watch poor women, come out here to make an honest dollar, and a forklift ready to forklift their thing and so on and so on. He listened to me and he granted them an extension into the afternoon. And I haven't been able to go back there or there yet. I promise to go walk around the market to talk to people. But this is something that has been going on now for decades. This thing about vending and the city and so on. Any perspective on it? I mean, it's one of those things like blackout that it's there and it never goes away, and everybody got a different kind of story on it. But for me, the sight of forklifting and women who I know are poor women trying to make a few dollars to go home and to feed their children, I don't know. I just can't stomach it. Whatever, whether they're in the wrong or the right, it don't feel right to me. And I couldn't stand up and not say something. Your thoughts?
Look, you're right. The the vending situation has been going on for decades. I never knew it when I left here, which was in the late 70s, just about 80. When I came back, I used to come every Christmas. I would see it in spurts. When I came back to live here, which is close to 10 years now, it really had taken off. And it grew and grew. And most of it was under the PPP government. We know the coalition had under 5 years, but it was already well established then. You're talking about this, and you happen to be in the vicinity, and I can hear the screams through you. This is people's livelihood that they have taken from scratch and grown into a little root right there at that corner of Denico or the seawall or some other place. So they have established what we call a ghoul down there. You know, catch a cook
Mm-hmm.
story, right? A ghoul there, and there's a comfort level, and they got the traffic, the market, and the ice house, and the bus park. So it's viable for business. If it comes to that point, suddenly that you've got to beautify and gentrify and rectify, then you have to come up with an alternative that not just is a space, right? But is a viable space.
Yes.
It's not just, well, we can take you from the four, wherever it is, 4 square yards. I think I got this wrong, and give you the equivalent someplace else. So is suffer so, right? Is equivalency. No, it's got to be something. I mean, look, down there is very, very crowded if we're going to focus on there. But how many vendors were there for?
There were about six of them, and
Six of, yeah.
yes, there were six of them. Yeah. Uh-huh.
So here's this. I think that with some sort of innovative thinking, that you can find space for those 6 vendors somewhere in that area where they are less obtrusive or intrusive, but they can ply their trade, their honest trade. Look, I understand progress, but sometimes, like many times, I don't like the price of progress.
Mm-hmm.
I understand progress. I'm for progress, but the price of progress can be painful. So let's get past now the rhetoric and look at the reality. You got to move these people. Say, look, we're going to have a timeline. These are the preliminaries, and then this is the plan. These are the preliminaries. This is the plan, and it's got these phases, right? and so and so and so, 1, 2, 3, and we are conditioning you. And by the way, this thing have to happen, right? Because it's bigger than all of us put together. But look, you got some options here. We limited, but we got you some options. One and two. You got one of two options. And they are, we must say, they are meaningful. They are meaningful in terms they are competitive. They ain't just put you in some barren wasteland where you sit down whole day like some Maytag man and waiting for the thing somebody turn up. It's that it has customer traffic, right? You're a vendor, so customer traffic and the kind of customer traffic is meaningful. So I am saying that yes, you're going to have this. You're going to have to accommodate the people up to a time. You're going to have to condition them, and then you're going to have to give them that perspective, that that area where they can continue without interruption. Because let me say this to you: these people lose more than a day or two, and they're in trouble. They're in serious trouble, right? So family wise, and most of them are not single people. So it's not just them alone and the clothes
Yeah,
on their
yeah,
back
yeah,
and the
yeah,
pot and stall what they got. So we've got to take this in mind. We must show that we are a growing society, but whilst we are a growing society, we are a caring society. And it's unfortunate and it's stark that it seems to be one kind of people that are coming under the microscope every single damn time that we talk,
yes,
or
yes,
this thing comes up. And
yeah,
that is harrowing and it's hurtful to me. And I think the government has to see the optics of this and understand Howard Jackson, I got to bring him back in, ends up in Mocha
yeah,
because he had to have heard echoes somewhere.
yeah.
Somebody had to have gotten to him. And these things cannot stay under a calabash forever.
Forever, yes, yeah. As you speak there, I remember growing up. You say that they're a day and a half away from nothing, and my auntie that raised us when my mother migrated, she was a vendor. She would go down to town and sell guinea and fruits and vegetable from the village, and often we cooked the rice. Sometimes if there was greens, we cut up the greens, but we waiting on
Waiting.
her
Yeah, yeah,
what she sell today for bring home
yeah,
the fish
yeah,
or the chicken. So
yeah.
I mean, when you say there, I mean, if she ain't sell that day,
It's bare
it's,
rice.
it's bare rice
It's
and
shine
butter,
rice. Yeah,
shine rice and butter we got to eat. So
yeah,
that thing is real. And
yeah.
so that when I saw that I couldn't stand. And I want publicly to thank the city engineer for listening to me. He didn't have to. I called him just out of the blues.
Mm-hmm.
I thank him for listening to me. I understand that he is much maligned. I can understand, but he listened to me. And it was about 11 o'clock. And he said, Dr. Hines, I'm working out a compromise with you. I give them up until 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Right? And I thank the women. I can see on their faces they could have done with 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock, but they were appreciative of the intervention,
Mm-hmm.
and they
And then
accepted
there's space. Yeah,
they accepted it. And
right.
we hugged and I chatted with them and so on, and they were appreciative, and so on. And I just want to thank the city manager and thank them for accepting the compromise. Um, my brother, your closing thoughts, anything that you so wanted to say that I didn't touch on before you go?
Well, I think we covered a lot of ground here, and I'm pretty glad that we could have shared with the audience. And I mean, you went from poetry, we went to history, sociology, and a whole set of things. And I think we covered a lot of territory tonight. And I really feel privileged of being a part of this program and to share. There's a lot of pain in this country. My brothers, our audience, whether you're in Europe or North America or the region or right here at home. One of the things that I used to say, I came back to this country because I love Guyana, and that is true. But I want to tell you this: I was wrong. God got a plan for all of we. And when I think it's because I love Guyana, because you got work for me to do here, right? I'm part of the work we're doing. Part of the work that I'm doing is being on this program. So thank you, David Hines, for the privilege. And thank you all for listening. God bless you. God bless, guy. And we're
And
going to get
thank you,
somewhere.
brother, for making the time to share with us. We are forever grateful. Thank you much.
God bless.
Thanks. And to you, our audience, as usual, I love you all tremendously, unconditionally, I say, but not uncritically, unconditionally. And I must. I have no choice. I come from that nigger yard of yesterday. I come from that nigger yard of yesterday. I'm not a nigger today. I'm not a Negro today. I'm an African, and you are Africans. Those of you who are not Black and African, you are Indian Guyanese, Amerindian Guyanese, Chinese Guyanese, Portuguese Guyanese. You are people. You are a dignified people. And I love you all. And I know you all love our country. You all love our society. And that is why every day, every night you turn up here to bear witness, because we are on a journey. Because as Dr. King said, we have a date with destiny. We have a date with destiny. And in a real sense, to quote Dr. King, we have a date with destiny. We're going to keep on keeping on, because as the Reverend Jackson would say, we are somebody. I am somebody. You are somebody. I'm going to see you all tomorrow night. We're going to be talking about mental health tomorrow night and health in general. And I understand they're planning a big demonstration in solidarity with the teachers on Thursday at 11 o'clock in front of the Ministry of Education. Please get your boots on and make that a hell of a demonstration on Thursday at 11 o'clock. I'm going to have somebody from it's been done by the GTU and the GTUC. So it seems as if all the other unions are on board with this. So that's on Thursday. Tomorrow night, we're going to be talking about mental health and health in general, but we're also going to have somebody from the union leadership or the GTUC leadership to come on and to talk about that demonstration on Thursday. See you all tomorrow night.